Counselor Vextalen's 5 hearts stopped beating simultaneously as the orbital defense grid failed, holographic displays blinking out one by one around the grand chamber. Impossible. The Zathkuri Confederation had established this outpost precisely because no sentient species could survive the intense radiation belts surrounding the Nix-9 system. Yet there it was, a fleet of crude vessels breaching their space, the lead ship's hull bearing primitive symbols, UNSCTHERMOPYL. How are they still alive? First Admiral Killeth demanded, mandibles clicking furiously as damage reports flooded in. The radiation would kill any biological entity. The answer came when the first boarding parties breached the central spire. The creatures that emerged from the airlock weren't wearing environmental suits. They were the suits. Bipedal synthetic bodies housing organic brains, moving with disturbing speed and in coordination. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of Earth's United Nations Space Command," announced the lead figure, its artificial voice echoing through the chamber. "Your defense grid has been neutralized. We didn't come looking for a fight, but we're damn well prepared for one." Vextalen stepped forward, his ceremonial cloak billowing. "How did you find us? This system is uncharted, protected by natural barriers no species cold." "We ate your barriers for breakfast, Counselor," Vasquez interrupted, the synthetic face incapable of expression, yet somehow radiating confidence. "Humans evolved on a radiation-soaked death trap of a planet. We've been swimming in cosmic rays since before we crawled out of the oceans." The data screens around them suddenly reactivated, displaying images of the human homeworld. A turbulent blue-green orb racked by storms, tectonic activity, and radiation levels that would sterilize most Confederation worlds. "Your civilization built itself in safe harbors," Vasquez continued. "Ours was forged in fire. Now shall we discuss terms, or would you prefer a demonstration of what happens when you corner an apex predator?" First Admiral Killeth lunged forward, energy blade igniting, only to collapse as a pulse from Vasquez's palm weapon struck him mid-leap. "That was set to stun," Vasquez noted calmly. "The next one won't be." Vextalen raised his hands in the universal gesture of submission. "What do you want?" "Justice. 3 cycles ago, one of your harvester ships encountered an unarmed human colony vessel near the Perseus Vale. Your captain classified our people as non-sapient specimens and took them for biological study." The council chamber erupted in whispers. Specimen collection was routine. The Confederation had catalogued thousands of pre-spaceflight species, but none had ever come looking for their missing members. None had ever followed the harvesters home. "Those colonists were my family," Vasquez said, her synthetic voice somehow carrying the weight of genuine emotion. "And humanity doesn't abandon its own." The Grand Assembly Chamber of the Zathkuri Confederation had never hosted non-members before. Now 5 human representatives sat opposite the High Council, their synthetic bodies unnervingly still between movements. 43 humans were taken, Dr. Amara Chen stated, her voice carrying through translator notes. "We want them back, alive and unarmed." High Elder Zothmare fluttered his sensory ridges in what humans would recognize as embarrassment. "We cannot comply." The specimens were distributed to various research facilities. Some underwent dissection procedures standard for. Captain Vasquez's synthetic fist dented the ancient ceremonial table. They were people, not specimens. Names, families, dreams. The room temperature dropped as the environmental systems struggled to compensate for the humans' cooling mechanisms working overtime. An unconscious stress response their synthetic bodies had been programmed to simulate. "Perhaps," interjected Counselor Vextalen, "we could offer compensation. Rare minerals, technology. We don't want your trinkets." Major Jackson Rivera cut in. "We want accountability. The records of who authorized this, who performed the procedures, and who profited from our people's suffering." The council members exchanged nervous glances. The Confederation's complex bureaucracy intentionally obscured responsibility, distributing it across multiple agencies and subdepartments. That would violate our most sacred governing principles, High Elder Zoth Mayer protested. No single individual bears culpability in Confederation operations. Convenient, Dr. Chen remarked coldly. Where we come from, just following orders stopped being an acceptable excuse centuries ago. Lieutenant Weisong, silent until now, placed a small device on the table. It projected a holographic display of the Confederation's entire defense network, classified information no outsider should possess. While we've been talking, Song explained, the UNSC Thermopylae has mapped every military installation in this system. We know where your fleet is deployed, the location of your shipyards, and the weaknesses in your planetary shields. The fifth human, Commander Daiki Tanaka, leaned forward. We're not barbarians. We don't want war. But understand something. Humans spent millennia fighting each other before we ever looked to the stars. We've had more practice at warfare than your entire Confederation has existed. Vexthalen's breathing tubes constricted in anxiety. What exactly do you propose? A treaty, Vasquez answered. Recognition of human sovereignty. Reparations for the families of the taken, and a formal apology broadcast to every world in your Confederation. Impossible, gasped a junior counselor. The social disruption alone would be nothing compared to what happens if we leave unsatisfied. Vasquez finished. Your society classified us as animals. We're giving you the chance to correct that mistake peacefully. The High Elder's skin paled to a sickly yellow. And if we refuse? Major Rivera smiled, a terrifying expression on his synthetic face. Then we'll show you exactly why humans survived on a planet that would kill any of you within minutes. We didn't bring one ship, Elder. We brought a storm. Lieutenant Song's hologram expanded, revealing the full human fleet waiting just beyond the system's edge. Hundreds of vessels, weapons primed. You have 6 hours to decide, Vasquez concluded. Choose wisely. The Ixel-Kareth Research Facility hung in orbit around Nix-9's fourth moon, a sprawling complex of interconnected habitation rings and laboratory modules. Inside Containment Block 7, Dr. Nadine Foster lay strapped to an examination table, the 43rd day of her captivity blurring into the others. They hadn't expected her to be conscious during the procedures. They hadn't expected her to understand their language either, but Nadine had always had a gift for patterns, for communication. While they studied her, she studied them. The facility alarms began without warning, a howling, multi-toned wail that sent her captors into panic. Through the observation window, Nadine saw them rushing about, data tablets clutched in clawed hands, sensory appendages flared in distress. Unknown vessels approaching, announced an automated voice in their clicking language. Defense protocols activated. Then came the impacts, precise, surgical strikes that sheared away sections of the facility without breaching her containment zone. The lights flickered, emergency systems engaged, and suddenly the restraints holding her down deactivated. The laboratory door slid open, and a figure stepped through. Humanoid but clearly mechanical, with an approximation of a human face molded into its headpiece. Dr. Foster. The figure asked in perfect English. I'm Major Rivera, UNSC Special Operations. We're here to take you home. Nadine's legs buckled as she tried to stand. Rivera caught her with inhuman reflexes. My colleagues, she rasped, her voice weak from disuse. There were others. We know. Rescue teams are deployed throughout the facility. Can you walk? She nodded, determination overriding weakness. Get me out of these scrubs and find me a weapon. I got some scores to settle. Rivera's synthetic face couldn't smile, but his voice carried approval. That's the spirit, Doctor. But let's focus on extraction first. They moved through corridors strewn with unconscious Zath Curie security personnel. Not dead, Nadine noted, just immobilized. The rescue team had been precise in their force application. How did you find us? she asked as Rivera guided her toward an extraction point. "We followed the harvester ship," he explained. "Took us 3 years to build the synthetic bodies that could withstand the radiation, another 2 to develop the fleet. But we never stopped looking." They reached a junction where another rescue team was escorting 5 more human survivors, emaciated, traumatized, but alive. Among them was Dr. Elias Hammond, Nadine's research partner and fiancé. Their reunion was wordless, desperate, hands clutching at each other to confirm this wasn't another cruel experiment or hallucination. The Confederation never expected consequences. Rivera continued as they hurried toward the extraction shuttle. "They've cataloged and collected specimens from 100 worlds, but none ever came looking for their missing people. None ever struck back." "Their mistake," Elias muttered, his normally gentle eyes hardened by captivity. "One they're paying for now," agreed Lieutenant Song, meeting them at the shuttle bay. "The Confederation Council is in complete disarray. They've never faced an enemy who penetrated their security so thoroughly." As the shuttle detached from the dying research station, Nadine watched through the viewport as more UNSC vessels systematically disabled the facility's remaining systems. "They took us because they thought we were primitive," she said quietly. "They kept us alive to study our biology, our stress responses, our capacity for pain." Rivera nodded, his synthetic body settling into a crash harness. "And now?" Nadine's gaze remained fixed on the facility as it receded from view. "Now they've learned what humans do when backed into a corner. They've learned about consequences. And retribution," added Elias. "No," Nadine corrected, finally turning away from the viewport. "Justice." The emergency session of the Zath Curry High Council had devolved into chaos. Elder representatives from 17 worlds shouted over one another, while military advisors projected increasingly desperate defense scenarios. "We cannot capitulate to these upstart primitives," bellowed War Chief Craxfall, his ceremonial armor clattering as he pounded the ancient speaking podium. "The Confederation has stood for 12 millennia. We do not bow to threats." Counselor Vexthalon rose slowly, his aged frame trembling not from fear, but from fury. "And in those 12 millennia, War Chief, how many species have we classified as non-sapient, simply because they communicated differently or had technology we didn't recognize?" The chamber fell silent. This was dangerously close to heresy. "The humans breached defenses we thought impenetrable," Vexthalon continued. "They survived radiation that would kill any of us. They built synthetic bodies to overcome their biological limitations. Does this sound primitive to you?" First Science Director Mael Thorin activated his data projection. "The humans' neural integration with their synthetic forms exceeds our own cybernetic capabilities. Their weapons employ principles we've theorized but never successfully implemented. I believe Counselor Vexthalon is correct. We have gravely misjudged this species." War Chief Craxfall's facial ridges darkened with blood, a sign of dangerous anger. "So we surrender. Broadcast our shame to every world under our protection. The social order would collapse. The alternative?" Diplomatic envoy Shilana interjected softly. "His war with a species that clearly does not fear us. A species willing to follow a harvester ship through radiation zones to rescue their people. What else might they be willing to do?" The Council's attention shifted to the tactical display showing the human fleet's position. They had made no aggressive moves since the rescue operation, maintaining their blockade with disciplined precision. "There is another concern," First Science Director Mael Thorin added reluctantly. "We analyzed the human communications. They've been broadcasting their location and our coordinates back to their homeworld continuously." Horrified murmurs rippled through the chamber. "This isn't just a rescue fleet," Vexthalon realized aloud. "It's a Pathfinder force. If we destroy them, more will come," finished diplomatic envoy Shilana. "And they will not come seeking peace." The ancient doors to the council chamber suddenly hissed open. Captain Elena Vasquez strode in, flanked by the rescued humans, now dressed in UNSC uniforms, their faces gaunt, but expressions resolute. "Your deliberation time is up," Vasquez announced. "We've recovered 39 of our people. 4 were already dead when we arrived, dissected for your research." Dr. Nadine Foster stepped forward, her voice steady despite her weakened state. "I was specimen Q7291 to you. I'm a xenolinguist with 3 doctorates. The colleague you vivisected while I watched was Dr. Marcus Chen, father of 2 children. We came to the Perseus Veil to study a neutron star. We were scientists, like you claim to be." War Chief Craxful rose, mandibles clicking in agitation. "You had no right to violate our sovereign space. And you had no right to take our people," Major Rivera countered. "Yet here we are." Vextalin moved between them, hands raised placatingly. "Perhaps there is a compromise, a formal recognition of human sapience, reparations for the affected families, and criminal charges for those responsible," Dr. Foster added firmly. "No more hiding behind collective decision-making." The council chamber erupted again, outrage battling with fear. Amid the chaos, diplomatic envoy Shilana quietly approached Captain Vasquez. "There is another matter," she whispered, "one the council hasn't yet addressed. You're not the first species we've collected. There are others, hundreds of others, still in facilities throughout Confederation space." Vasquez's synthetic face remained impassive, but her voice hardened. "Show me." The UNSC Thermopylae's command center hummed with activity as Captain Vasquez reviewed the data Shilana had secretly transferred, detailed files on 27 sapient species currently held in Confederation research facilities. "They're sorted by threat assessment," Shilana explained, her translator struggling with her agitated speech patterns. "The Confederation captures representatives from any species showing potential for future space travel." Dr. Foster, still recovering but insistent on being present, examined the biological profiles. "They're studying everyone's adaptability, looking for potential rivals before they reach the stars." "No," Shilana corrected, sensory ridges flattening in shame. "Looking for weaknesses to exploit if conflict ever occurs." The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. "This changes everything," Major Rivera finally said. "We came for our people. We can't just leave knowing others are suffering the same fate." Captain Vasquez studied the star chart showing facility locations throughout Confederation space. "A rescue operation on this scale would require resources we don't have." "So we call home," Lieutenant Song suggested. "Request reinforcements." "That would take months," Dr. Elias Hammond objected. "Some of these species have been captive for decades already." Dr. Foster suddenly straightened, a dangerous light in her eyes. "We don't need to free them ourselves. We just need to give them the means to free themselves." All eyes turned to her. "The Confederation's security systems are centralized," she continued, gesturing to Shilana's data. "We've already proven we can bypass them. What if we transmitted unlock codes to every containment facility simultaneously?" Commander Tanaka shook his head. "That's assuming the captives could operate the escape mechanisms, navigate alien environments, secure transportation. So we give them more," Foster insisted. "Navigation data, translation matrices, access to communication systems." Vasquez considered the proposal, her synthetic fingers drumming soundlessly on the tactical display. "It would be chaos. It would be justice," Foster countered. Shilana's voice quavered as she spoke. "The social disruption would be incalculable. The Confederation has maintained order for millennia by controlling information, controlling contact between species. A house of cards built on deception," Rivera remarked coldly. "More like a prison," Foster added. Captain Vasquez made her decision. "Lieutenant Song, prepare a data package for each captive species, translated instructions, facility layouts, basic ship operations. Dr. Foster, work with Shilana to create a message explaining the situation. And if the council discovers what we're planning?" Shilana asked, trembling visibly now. They won't, Vasquez assured her, because we're going to distract them with negotiations they can't refuse. 6 hours later, as the Confederation Council debated the human terms, the UNSC team executed their plan. The signal was untraceable, bounced through the Confederation's own communication network, a cascading series of commands that unlocked every research facility containment system simultaneously. On 27 worlds, alarms blared as supposedly secure doors slid open. Translation devices activated, displaying simple messages. You are not alone. You have been imprisoned. Follow these instructions to freedom. Captain Vasquez stood before the council as reports of the breakouts began flooding in, her synthetic face as impassive as ever, while chaos erupted around her. What have you done? High Elder Zothmare demanded, his ancient frame shaking with fury. Created a level playing field. Vasquez replied calmly. Now shall we discuss those terms again? I believe your negotiating position has just significantly weakened. In the observation gallery, Dr. Foster watched the pandemonium with grim satisfaction. The Confederation wanted to study other species in isolation. She murmured to Elias. Instead, they'd just witnessed what happens when humanity decides to change the rules. The Nix-9 system blazed with weapons fire as Confederation vessels scrambled to contain the unprecedented crisis. 27 species, previously isolated from one another, were now coordinating their escape using communication protocols provided by the humans. Aboard the UNSC Thermopylae, the command center had become an impromptu interspecies coordination hub. Lieutenant Song's translation algorithms worked overtime as messages poured in from desperate escapees. The Vrelden ships have cleared the blockade at Outpost 17. Song reported, indicating a cluster of signals moving rapidly through the outer system. They're rendezvousing with the Tori-Hep transport as planned. The Confederation is deploying hunter-killer drones to intercept, Commander Tanaka warned, tracking multiple hostile signals. Captain Vasquez turned to Shilana, who stood trembling but resolute beside the communications array. Your turn, envoy. The Zathkuri diplomat hesitated for only a moment before activating the emergency broadcast channel, a system designed for use only during existential threats to the Confederation. Attention all Confederation vessels, she announced, her translator rendering her words in the military command dialect. This is diplomatic envoy, Shilana invoking emergency protocol Zenith 9. Stand down immediately. The Council has authorized safe passage for all research subjects. Repeat, stand down. Major Rivera raised an eyebrow. Will they buy that? The verification codes are authentic, Shilana replied. By the time they realize I've exceeded my authority, many will have already escaped. On the tactical display, red markers representing Confederation pursuit craft began halting their advance, some breaking off entirely. Not all of them are complying, noted Dr. Foster, pointing to a battle group still accelerating toward the fleeing Vrelden ships. Vasquez nodded grimly. Commander Tanaka, deploy intercept squadrons. Weapons free. The UNSC strike craft launched from the Thermopylae bays, sleek and predatory against the backdrop of stars. They moved with precision that spoke of countless combat drills, positioning themselves between the Confederation forces and the escaping refugees. The lead Confederation vessel fired a warning shot, a particle beam that dissipated harmlessly against the human ship's shields. Return fire, Tanaka ordered calmly. Target their propulsion systems only. The human response was devastating in its accuracy. Surgical strikes disabled the Confederation vessels without destroying them, leaving them adrift, but with life support intact. Message from the Council, Lieutenant Song announced. High Elder Zothmare is demanding to speak with Captain Vasquez immediately. Put him through, Vasquez replied, straightening her synthetic frame as the Elder's image appeared on the main display. This is an act of war, Zothmare raged, his translator barely keeping up with his agitated speech. You've violated every principle off. Save it, Vasquez interrupted. Your Confederation has been kidnapping and experimenting on sentient beings for centuries. Any claim to moral authority you might have had ended there. You don't understand the consequences of what you've done, the Elder insisted, his rage giving way to something that looked remarkably like fear. Some of these species were separated for good reason. Ancient conflicts, biological incompatibilities. Then they'll have to work those issues out themselves, Vasquez replied firmly. As equals, not as your specimens. Across the system, the liberated species were adapting with remarkable speed. Some demonstrated previously concealed technological aptitude, quickly mastering the Confederation vessels they commandeered. Others revealed communication methods the Zathkuri had never detected, coordinating complex maneuvers through means impossible for the Confederation to track. Dr. Foster stood at the viewscreen, watching as a flotilla of diverse ships assembled at the designated rendezvous point, the beginning of what she had already started calling the Liberation Fleet. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Captain Vasquez joined her at the window. "Now we give them a choice. Return to their homeworlds with the means to defend themselves, or join us in ensuring the Confederation never imprisons another species. And if they choose revenge instead," Foster pressed. Vasquez's synthetic features remained impassive, but her voice carried the weight of understanding. "Then we'll have to live with the consequences of what we've unleashed." The Grand Assembly Chamber had been reproposed as an interspecies forum, the first in the Confederation's long history. Representatives from 23 of the liberated species had arrived, each group eyeing the others with mixtures of curiosity, caution, and in some cases, ancient animosity. Captain Vasquez stood at the center, her synthetic body now adorned with diplomatic insignia, hastily created for the occasion. "You all know why you're here," she began, her words translated simultaneously into 23 different languages. "For generations, the Zathkuri Confederation has presented itself as the pinnacle of galactic civilization, while systematically imprisoning and experimenting on other sentient species." Murmurs of anger rippled through the gathered delegates. "Today that ends," Vasquez continued. "But what comes next is for you to decide, not us." From the Confederation side of the chamber, War Chief Craxval stepped forward, his posture rigid with forced humility. "The Confederation acknowledges errors in judgment. We offer reparations, technological exchanges. You offer what you can no longer withhold," interrupted the Torihep representative, a crystalline entity whose translucent body pulsed with indignation. "After 87 cycles of imprisonment, your contrition rings hollow." "We should dismantle their empire entirely," growled the Vreldan delegate, a massive Ursine figure whose species had lost entire colonies to Confederation collection missions. "Strip their worlds, take their technology, let them experience captivity." The chamber erupted in competing voices, centuries of suppressed grievances boiling over. Captain Vasquez allowed it to continue for precisely 3 minutes before activating a sonic dampener that brought immediate silence. "This is exactly what they expect from you," she said quietly, her amplified voice carrying to every corner. "Chaos. Retribution. A justification for their belief that different species cannot coexist as equals." Dr. Foster stepped forward from the human delegation. "During my captivity, I learned that the Confederation's greatest fear wasn't any single species. It was the possibility of cooperation between species. Their entire social order depends on being the sole arbiters of interstellar contact." The insectoid Cithral delegate chittered thoughtfully. "So we are to forgive centuries of exploitation?" "No," Vasquez replied firmly. "But consider this. Humanity came here for justice, not vengeance. We could have destroyed their defenses and bombarded their worlds. Instead, we chose a different path." "What do you propose?" asked the Torihep representative. Dr. Foster activated a holographic display showing a star system at the convergence of several territorial boundaries. A neutral zone, a place where all species can meet, trade, and develop without Confederation interference. A counterweight to their power. "An alliance," Major Rivera added, "not an empire." War Chief Craxfall's mandibles clicked in agitation. The Confederation would never. The Confederation will adapt, or it will become irrelevant. Vasquez interrupted. Your monopoly on interspecies contact is over. As the delegates debated the proposal, Commander Tanaka received an urgent communication from the Thermopylae. His expression grew grave as he listened. Captain, he said quietly, approaching Vasquez. Long-range sensors have detected multiple warp signatures approaching from the direction of Earth. The UNSC 4th Fleet will arrive within 12 hours. Vasquez's synthetic features couldn't show surprise, but her voice modulation shifted subtly. That's 3 months ahead of schedule. How? They were already en route when we sent our first transmission, Tanaka explained. Admiral Chandler apparently decided we might need backup regardless of what we found here. A slow, deliberate laugh escaped Vasquez, perhaps the first genuine expression of emotion her synthetic body had conveyed. Humanity never does anything halfway, does it? The observation deck of the UNSC Thermopylae offered a panoramic view of history unfolding. Below, on the surface of the neutral moon designated Haven 1, construction drones from a dozen species worked in coordinated patterns, laying the foundations of what would become the Alliance Assembly, the first truly interspecies governing body in known space. Dr. Nadine Foster stood at the viewport, her reflection overlaid against the activity below. The weeks of proper nutrition and medical care had restored much of her physical health, but her eyes still carried the shadows of her captivity. Having second thoughts, asked Captain Vasquez, joining her at the window. The captain had temporarily transferred her consciousness back to her biological body for the formal signing ceremony scheduled later that day. Not about the Alliance, Foster replied. About humanity's role in it. We've become the linchpin of this entire arrangement, whether we intended to or not. Vasquez nodded thoughtfully. Admiral Chandler's been fielding non-stop diplomatic requests since the fleet arrived. Everyone wants human protection, human technology, human mediation. They see us as liberators. For now, Vasquez cautioned, novelty eventually wears off. Then comes the hard part, maintaining peace between species with fundamentally different biology, psychology, and history. Foster turned from the window as the door hissed open. Elias entered, accompanied by Shilana and representatives from 3 other species, the core drafting committee for the Alliance Charter. The framework is finished, Elias announced, his face showing exhaustion but satisfaction. Equal representation, mutual defense provisions, technology exchange protocols, everything we discussed. With one addition, added the Vrelden representative, Gortek, his massive frame barely fitting through the human-sized doorway. A specialized intervention force drawn from all member species, specifically tasked with preventing exploitation of pre-spaceflight civilizations. The Liberation Corps, Shilana explained, her translator conveying unmistakable pride. To ensure no species suffers as yours did. Foster exchanged a glance with Vasquez. That wasn't in our original proposal. No, admitted Tyrell, the crystalline Toriep delegate. But it is perhaps the most important provision. What you humans did, risking everything to rescue your captured people, awakened something in all of us. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. Compassion. Responsibility, corrected Gortek. For too long, we who suffered under Confederation control dreamed only of escaping ourselves. You taught us to think beyond our own survival. The deck vibrated slightly as the Thermopylae adjusted its orbit. Through the viewport, they could see the UNSC 4th Fleet arranged in ceremonial formation, a show of force that was simultaneously a pledge of protection for the fledgling alliance. The signing ceremony begins in 1 hour, Elias reminded them. The feeds will be broadcast to every world in the sector, including deep into Confederation space. Foster nodded absently, her attention caught by a small cargo shuttle approaching from the surface. One of dozens ferrying personnel and materials between the moon and orbiting vessels. Something troubles you still, observed Tyrell, whose species was remarkably attuned to emotional states. I was thinking about names, Foster replied. Haven 1 for the Moon, the Alliance for our coalition, the Liberation Corps for our joint force. But we haven't named what happened here, this moment when everything changed. The humans have, rumbled Gortek. Your Admiral Chandler called it the Storm Protocol in his official report. Foster smiled faintly. Appropriate. We came like a storm, breaking barriers everyone thought impenetrable. Not just any storm, corrected Shilana. A storm of justice. Captain Vasquez checked the time and straightened her formal uniform. Time to make it official. The representatives are waiting. As they moved toward the shuttle bay, Foster paused for one last look at the construction efforts below. What had begun as a rescue mission had catalyzed something far greater, a fundamental realignment of power in this sector of space. No one was supposed to come, she murmured, echoing the Confederation's original rationale for placing research facilities in radiation-soaked systems. That was their first mistake. And their last, added Elias, taking her hand. Together, they walked toward the ceremony that would formalize the new alliance, a coalition born from humanity's refusal to abandon their own, now committed to ensuring no species would face exploitation alone again. In the grand tapestry of galactic history, it would be remembered as the moment when the impossible barriers between worlds finally fell, when humanity brought the storm that washed away the old order and seeded the clouds of something new. Not through conquest, but through consequence. Not through domination, but through determination. Not with a demand for revenge, but with an insistence on justice. The storm had come, and in its wake, the dawn of a new era had begun.